I think the first thing for me is to I like to use the phrase less thinking, more feeling. And I feel that a lot of men are hijacking, they're letting the logical brain hijack the intuition. So the intuition, again, the gut feelings, they give us clues and extra credit in the present moment. So when something feels right, it probably is. And when something does not feel right, it probably is not.
Jason Komosa in the building, probably one of the sweetest shoe setup backgrounds that you can possibly imagine. We are both fellow Midwesterners, so you were just telling me that we have a short period of time where we can actually wear our nice sneakers out and not get them completely trashed. So I hear you. I feel your pain.
That's right. I mean, here in Chicago, we only have a couple good months of nice weather, so we got to keep them clean and crispy.
Yep, absolutely. We don't get the lake effect like you do down here in Lafayette, but I still understand the gloom that is the 6 months of nasty weather here in Indiana. So I feel you, brother. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to get you on board and to talk a little bit more about this thing called life. And today we're going to be talking about your expertise and the things that you like to focus on with your clients, specifically in the world of stress management, but also like really, why do we put ourselves through this thing called stress? What's it all for? Am I really doing the right things? Is it worth it? Yada, yada, right? All the things that we love to talk about as coaches. But tell us a little bit more about kind of your coaching and your background and what got you to be doing what you're doing today.
Yeah. So I have a degree in psychology. I ultimately launched my career in sales and tech sales. And so I found myself burnt out, extremely stressed, extremely just tied my self-worth to my work, my money, my bank account, my title, all these things that didn't really feel healthy to me. And I was 29 years old. I had found some financial success. I grew up poor, Coach Woody, so I didn't have a lot of money growing up. The story I told myself was that when I get money, then I'll be happy. And unfortunately, or not I guess it depends on how you look at it. I mean, I received some money. I was very grateful to receive some financial stability early on in my career. And yet I also found myself completely lost. Like, what the fuck's wrong with me? Why am I not happy? Like, I should be so happy because I have this money. Why am I not happy? What's wrong with me? And this is when I kind of started and dipped my toe into the water of coaching. I actually hired a coach. After seeing different types of therapists, I didn't get what I wanted from them, which was an action plan or a blueprint. And so I ultimately invested in myself, and that really launched my trajectory to the world of coaching. And so now I spend my days helping men diffuse stress, detach their self-worth from work and money, and ultimately create a lifestyle of flourishing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Flourishing. You can see over my shoulder. I just got done talking to Dr. Ellen Contenti, about the idea of flourishing and languishing. And so it's very similar conversations, but that's the ultimate goal, right? Is can we create a life of flourishing?
Yeah. I mean, if you zoom out, right, especially, and this is, at least I'm speaking for men, it's like there's the ecosystem or the zeitgeist of males in work. It's like men believe we're here to work and make money and work. It's just like there's this constant combustion that's happening. And I think, again, especially for men that are fathers, we live in a generation that really encourages the male present father figure to be there, to do the things like pick the kids up from school or take them to the doctor or take them to basketball practice, or all these things where, again, at least from my perception, the men that I was raised around, right, when I was a child, when I was a boy, those men did not do those things. They did not pick up the kids from school or take them to the doctor or whatever. Like, the man's job was to work and make money, and the woman's job was the home and the kids, right? That was kind of like there was a very strict separation where this is your role or responsibility, go do it. And now we live in 2024 where it's more like there's a combustion happening, where you have the men that are trying to do their best at work and money, but also be with the children and be present. And again, it's causing a lot of internal stickiness.
Yeah, yeah, that strikes a chord with me as a father of a 5-year-old. There's always this pull of I want to contribute to my family. I want to be a supporter. I also want to be home and connect in those regards and be present.
Yeah.
But I also want to contribute to the world and do things that are meaningful and purposeful. And I think that that's true of men. I think that's also true of women who can also feel that pull. I'm not one, so I can't speak to that,
Right.
but
Right.
they feel that pull of wanting to be home and be the caregiver, but also wanting to have a successful job and all that. And I don't know. It's always a touchy subject a little bit to talk about roles in the household, right? Because a lot of people might say, well, it's not the woman's job, it's not the guy's job, and I agree with that. It's not anybody's job preconceived by what gender they are necessarily. I think what works well in our house is we kind of fall into the traditional roles. My wife loves to stay at home. She is a stay-at-home mom. We're blessed that she can be able to do that, and she loves taking care of my son and doing the arts and the crafts. And I'm more of the let's take care of the house and build the things, and I work and I bring in the money. So it's traditional, but it was also intentional, right?
Mm.
It was we sat down and had a conversation about those things. Hey, what do you enjoy
Mm.
doing? What do I enjoy doing? She does it because she likes it. And now I'll not always, right? Some days she's like, I wish I didn't
Sure.
have to cook, but for the most part, she's a tremendous cook. And she enjoys the things that she does, and vice versa. I do as well. What have you found to be true in terms of how you approach that when you're working with your clients, and
Well,
of like, how do you figure that out?
I just want to call out really quick is that it's amazing to hear that you had that conversation with your wife. Like, sit down and like, hey, let's figure this out as a team. A lot of times in relationship dynamics, there's like the man and the woman, and it's almost like they operate on separate teams.
Hmm.
So it's like, hey, we're on the same team here. How can we make sure that we're both aligned and again on the same team? Because a lot of people, especially men, again, I work with men primarily. They'll say that they're on the same team as their wife, but they're really energetically, or they're holding on to anger or frustration or resentment, and it's like, again, that's not healthy for the relationship. So kudos to you. I mean, it sounds like, again, a lot of people spend more time planning a vacation than they do planning their life.
Ah.
So I love hearing that you had the conversation with your wife. Again, that's awesome.
Thank you.
So sorry, what was the original question?
Yeah, absolutely. The question was kind of how do you navigate or talk through that with your clients, or what have you found to be either an issue, and maybe one of them is not communicating what you want out of your relationship, but also maybe what are some things that have worked well with your clients? Like, how do you approach that conversation to better help them kind of navigate those waters?
I think the first thing for me is to I like to use the phrase less thinking, more feeling. And I feel that a lot of men are hijacking, they're letting the logical brain hijack the intuition. So the intuition, again, the gut feelings, they give us clues and extra credit in the present moment. So when something feels right, it probably is. And when something does not feel right, it probably is not. And yet we have this massive amount of people that are taking their logical brains and they're hijacking the intuition. They're saying, no, we're going to stay at this job because of XYZ. We're going to stay because of the money or the title, or because we've always been in accounting and therefore we will always be in accounting. Even though we hate accounting, it doesn't matter. So it's kind of like this logical brain that will come on in and again, really bully and smother the intuition. And so before talking about external conversations with a wife or a boss or whoever, it's like, okay, what kind of conversations can we have with ourselves? What sort of what sort of conversations can we drum up and say, hey, well, this is how I'm feeling. Why am I feeling this way? Or when I felt this way in the past, how did I get over it last time? Right? We've been here before, and yet a lot of times we find ourselves freaking out like this is the first time we've ever had or experienced this feeling that's unwanted. When again, it's typically not. This is not something that's new. So it's like, how do we overcome this in the past? How do we diffuse this in the past? How can we learn from that and continue to move forward?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have about 80,000 thoughts in a day, and 80% of them or 60,000 thoughts in a day, 80% of them are the same thoughts we had yesterday, something around that line, right?
Unreal.
So it's like, we've probably gone through this before, asking ourselves, how do we manage it? I like that.
Yeah.
I think that's phenomenal. I think
Yeah.
there's another piece of it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Another piece of that intuition piece is also maybe the fear of change. The okay, I've been an accountant for the last 15 years, and even though I hate it, I don't know what it looks like if I change. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe the fear of change can even overcome that. It's, part logic, but also
Mm-hmm.
part just fear. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts in that regard?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my heart is like, yes, that absolutely. If there's fear or whatever feelings that there are, we want to honor them. We want to recognize them and honor them. Where I see a lot of men getting caught up is within the resistance to the feeling they don't want to have. So again, we can't control the feeling that we have. We can control how you respond or react to the feeling. And so many times we'll have this feeling come into our atmosphere, and it's not a good feeling, right? It's anger, it's frustration, it's sadness. And so what do? We say, no, men will say, no, 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 I don't feel that way. I'm fine.
Mm.
But really they're lying to themselves, because they actually do feel that feeling. And yet they're not allowing themselves to feel the feeling due to shame, due to guilt, whatever. And therefore that resistance to the unwanted feeling only exacerbates the unwanted feeling. It makes it worse.
Yeah.
And so this is what a lot of men I see, is a vicious cycle where they constantly have these feelings they don't think they should have, and then they make it worse by not honoring the feeling. They try to reject it and push it in a corner, pretend it's not there, and doing so only makes the feeling worse.
Yeah, and that's a huge aspect of a lot of mindfulness meditation practices. Even the entire kind of religion of Buddhism, from what little I know about it, is this idea of acceptance. Right, first we have to just accept that what we're going through right now is what we're going through. It's here, whether
and it's okay.
Yeah,
I think one of the greatest like scripts or prompts I love to give men is, I feel blank, and that's okay. I feel whatever blank, and that's okay. Because if you have the feeling, again, it's there. You can either treat it with love and compassion and empathy, or hatred and anger and frustration. But either way, the feeling is still there. We get to pick and choose which route we want to take.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So today we're jumping in. We're focusing on these different aspects of our well-being, and obviously you spend a lot of time helping people with their emotional aspects of well-being, the stress that they're feeling, and it sounds like it's a little bit related to the idea of my self-worth as it relates to the work that I do or the things that I contribute to my life. But ultimately, emotional well-being is emotional well-being, and so.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of wellness in that space, what does that mean to you? How would you describe wellness to somebody else that is maybe not sure?
So I would say, to make it, like, to dumb it down, wellness is having the conversation with the inner voice and asking him or her, how actually are we? How are we? How are we feeling? What would be potentially, what could help us do better, be better? Again, so I think emotional wellness is, again, asking yourself, how do I feel? And genuinely honoring whatever you feel, as opposed to rejecting it, which, again, that's kind of the default for men, because we were never taught what to do with unwanted feelings. So and again, I know this is a broad statement, but I feel that the men out there that when they have a feeling they don't want to feel, sadness, anger, rage, whatever, again, they're not honoring it, and therefore only making things worse.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, to your point, it's the awareness of it and then the acceptance of it, which I think that almost goes hand in hand and kind of in that order, right? I think the first step is just being aware that you're having those feelings. And then then comes the harder part of acceptance of that feeling.
Absolutely. And a lot of times you will see people out there that want to go from step 0 to step 2, which is, here's where I'm at right now, and here's where I want to go. And it's like, well, wait a minute. We want to first say, like where are we right now in this moment? Where are we, and how can we fully accept whatever feelings that we have, as opposed to, again, rejecting them or smothering them, pushing them down. It's like if you try to put a beach ball underwater,
Mm-hmm.
Once that happens, you let go, shoots right up, right? It's the same thing with our emotions. If we're trying to shove the beach ball underwater, it's not going to work. We might, the logical brain would love it to work. The logical brain would love to see that beach ball stay underwater, but that's just not how reality is. That's just not how it works.
Yeah. So when you think of your clients, the people that you work with, sounds like they're obviously struggling in their emotional wellness. So they would be considered on the spectrum that we talk about, that maybe on the sicker end.
Mm-hmm.
But what are some of the things that might bring the people that you're working with to you?
Well, so a couple of things. So the first is some of the people I support, I wouldn't necessarily say they have a problem or a challenge, right? Some of the times they're just feeling a bit lost. Sometimes they're, again, uncertain. They just they're like, I don't know. I don't know who said this, but there's only two problems in life, or there's only two problems. Either you know what you want and you don't know how to get it, or you don't know what you want. Like, those are the two problems.
Sure.
So it's almost like, okay, well, if the men can at least identify what do I want here and how do I get it, that's where I come in, right? Let's get a game plan together. Let's get a blueprint together to close that gap between where you are now and where you want to be. I'm a gap closer, right? I'm going to help you. I'm going to expedite your progress in closing that gap, so that way you can reach your highest potential.
Sure. I love that. I think there's a third problem, which I see a lot, which is I think I know what I want and I'm trying to get it and it's making me miserable.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of people think, to your point, a lot of people think, oh, if I just get this next thing, I'm going to be happy.
Yep.
And that's it ends up 20 years later, unfortunately.
It's the same story. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Once I get this, then I'll be happy. Once I do that, or I finish this, or then it's just like, no, these are lies that we feed ourselves to make ourselves feel better about where we're at.
Yeah. I had an aha moment this morning. So I always look at money like this. I see money as a tool that allows me to do good things and serve the people around me, right? But I had a moment this morning, because just like anybody else, sometimes I get attached to ideas of financial success and all of the things that come with those thoughts, right? I want more so that I can do this. And the aha moment I had this morning, small but mighty in my opinion, was, I don't need more money. If I had more money, I could do this, right? And then I could insert within that these different thoughts on how I would serve other people, right? I could start an endowment, or I could give to charity, or I could host parties to help people with their, to have engagement and enjoyment, like things like that. But that idea of like letting go of this, I need money, instead asking myself, okay, if I had more money, what would that look like? And then answering that question in a way that is, meaningful.
And you know what I love to hear? So it's amazing. It lights me up. And what I love to hear is how you have, and not just you, but this is everyone, where we tell ourselves we get to write our definition of what we need. We get to choose what we need. So the old Jason, right? He would say, well, I need to get to work. I need to close clients, sign deals. Like, that's what I need. The reality is like, I don't need that. What I need is I need a good night's sleep. I need time to read. I need time for physical movement or activity. Like, I don't need to clean up Salesforce. That can wait.
Yeah.
Reading cannot wait. Working out cannot wait. The Salesforce or the Slack messages, most likely, those can wait.
Sure.
Yeah. Right? But yet we'll say to ourselves, no. Those emails can't wait. I'll push aside exercising to do another hour's worth of work. Right. And this is speaking from I used to tell myself this story where it was like, I'm not going to work out today. It's not a big deal. I'm going to do some more work and I'll work out tomorrow. And it's like, yeah, sometimes I might work out tomorrow, but like, I should not be ignoring the things that cannot wait. Reading, exercising, movement, meditation, all these things that, again, they cannot wait.
Yeah. Dr. Contenti talked a little bit last episode that when we recorded was, there will always be more work. There will always be
Always.
more that you can be doing, and putting those things off is not going to be deleterious necessarily in the long run, as long as they get done. That's not suggesting that you can shirk responsibility, but
Correct.
exercise, meditation, all those things are daily practices that, if you do push those off, will compound in a negative fashion, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty insightful, and that's something that when I'm working with my clients, some big yellow flags to me, which are, I really need to pay attention to this, is when they start saying, I need to do something, right? Because if you have a strong enough sensation that you feel you need it, because to me, need qualify, like that's a big word. Need qualifies right up there with food, water, shelter, and love, right?
Yeah.
Like those are needs. Anything else, it's a really good chance you want to do it. So when I hear need, I'm like, okay, there's probably a lot of things attached to this. Let's talk about that a little bit more. It's typically, I need it because I think it's going to bring me happiness. I need it because I think it's going to bring me self-worth.
Yeah, all these self-created, self-inflicted definitions of what is needed.
Yeah. And
we get to decide that.
Yeah. I have found too, Jason, correct me if you feel differently or if you've seen something else, but I found when I suggest to them that they stop saying need and they start saying I want to, it can really change the paradigm of how they think about that work. Because instead of I need to work, it's no, I want to work because it helps me contribute to my family, or I want to put together a podcast because I think it's going to be beneficial for other people. It takes the pressure off of it a little bit.
100%. Just that 2 millimeter shift, the energetic shift of what do I need or do I want to? Yeah. Notice the difference in energy.
Yeah.
Same goes for like I feel versus I am. So there's another analogy I love to give the folks I work with. Like I feel stressed versus I am stressed. Right? One of those is temporary. Oh, I feel stressed. The other one, I am stressed. That's essentially, the definition of that means you are embodying stress. Like you are a walking version of stress.
Yeah.
Which is not true. I am a man. I am a father, right? Like those are things that's who I am. Feelings are temporary. I feel hungry. I feel tired. I feel sad. I feel nervous. Those don't make up our characteristics of who we are as a human being.
Yeah. I love that. Joseph Goldstein is a meditation practitioner. He's on the app 10% Happier, which I use a lot. It's from this book right here from Dan Harris called 10% Happier. Dan Harris is like an extremely skeptical meditator. And so he's like devoted his life towards getting it to people who aren't the typical, Eastern culture style meditation, right? But Joseph Goldstein, one of his teachers, I have it saved in my app because it's so powerful, but he postulates this idea of shifting your mindset from I am stressed to there is stress. So very similar to what you're saying. So like instead of I am hungry, it's there is hunger. And by shifting that mindset, you're recognizing, like you're saying, all of these things are temporary and they will go away at some point, given enough time and enough energy towards it. But it doesn't have to identify you. There is anger versus I am angry. So that was really powerful for me. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. And we know that these feelings will most likely come back. This isn't like a one-time thing where it's like, oh, I feel whatever. And like, that's that. Oh, I feel stressed, or there is stress. It's like, okay, well, if there's stress now, there probably will be stress in the future. What are we going to do next time? How are we going to use this experience or this situation to help us fuel our growth for the next time this happens?
Yeah. And a lot of people who are in this space also recommend too, to feel the same way about good things.
Oh,
not get attached to good things.
100%. It's, right, because if you think about it, life is a fluctuating up and down. It's all it is, ups, downs, ups, downs, ups, downs. So it's like, can we treat the good and the good and the bad the same and just say, like very stoic, like, okay, something good happens, okay. Something bad happens, you're like, okay. I think the greatest example of this, Woody, would be when like someone gets laid off. Right? They get laid off from the job. It's terrible. It's the worst thing ever. They're in the dumps. And then 2 months later, they get a new job, better position, more money, better company, better working hours, whatever. And they're like, oh, this is the best thing that ever happened. It's like, well, this wouldn't have happened had the layoff not have happened. So who's to say what's good or bad? We're doing that to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's back to the acceptance piece, right?
Yeah.
Accepting that that's the way it is, and then asking yourself, what can I do now? Yeah. And there's the story. I won't bore people with it. They can Google it if they want to, about the farmer, the man who has a horse, and the horse runs away, and he's like, the villagers say, that's too bad. And he said,
good.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yep. And then they brings back some other horses, and they're like, oh, so happy. We'll see. Yeah. So if you haven't heard that, for people who are listening, go Google it. It's the farmer with the horse. We'll see kind of story. They'll find it. But same concept, just acceptance and recognizing that nothing is permanent. So I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And I love that, to hear that, that narrative, that fable, the good or the good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. It's just like, okay, we'll see.
I love it. So we've talked a little bit about this idea of stress, and that stress is both impermanent and temporary, but probably something that we've put on ourselves. And so that's kind of the work that you do with the people that you work with and the people that you are trying to help. I'd like to dive into just a little bit about these qualities that you're looking for when you're seeing somebody or they're seeing themselves and realize, oh, I probably need to talk to somebody. What are some of the things that you're looking at that makes you go, okay, this is what they're suffering from, and we need to start to work on that?
Yeah, I think, well, so if I could back up a step, so I think a lot of the men that I work with, like, the things I like to see in some of the, well, let me ask you this. Are you looking for more of a case study, if you will, or more so of like a zoomed out perspective of how I see?
Yeah, I would say maybe let's look at it in this light. Let's say there's an aggregate of all the people that you've ever worked with, and you're looking for commonalities in terms of like, what was it that showed them that they were probably in need of coaching, or how did they know that there were things that were happening that they needed to really start to look inside and see what was going on that needed this shift in perspective, or things like that. It's kind of those qualities that let them know that they were on the sicker side of emotional wellness.
So I think it's like if and this is, again, I'm generalizing here, but it's like the people that I work with, if they've checked all the boxes, right? So they have a job, they've got some money, they've maybe got a partner or kids. So like they've done all the things that they have been told or taught to do to become happy. And yet they find themselves like not fully intrinsically fulfilled. So they're saying to themselves, like, what's wrong with me? Or what am I missing? You know what I mean? And so it's like, they feel this need of like, I'm missing something. I don't necessarily know what, maybe, but I'm not complete. I'm not satisfied. And again, this kind of goes into the idea of what narratives or beliefs are you telling yourself? What stories are you feeding yourself every single day about your life and where you're at and where you should be, or how things should be versus reality, right? Because that is the definition of unhappiness, when our expectations don't meet reality, right? When we create these mental movies in our head, and then all of a sudden that movie that we create doesn't match reality, we find ourselves getting upset and unhappy. It's like, well, we're the ones that created it. Just like we're the creator, the director, and the star of the film, we're also the editor. So we need to go hit the editing room and rewrite that scene.
Yeah.
Because we have the power to do that. But many times we don't choose to do that. We choose to stick with the one story. Okay, we're going to do one shot, one take, one scene, go. And it's like, that's not how life is.
Sure. And I would venture to say too, the unfortunate circumstances, a lot of people look at that and think that there's somebody else behind the camera, or somebody else writing the script, somebody else. There's a lot of blame, right? There's well, if society was different, or if my parents had done this differently, or if if my boss was more open to blah blah blah, and there are a lot of points to the external factors of life, but to your point, there's nobody else writing the script.
Correct. Correct. We're in full control here. It's our story. It's our movie. It's all us. We're the star. We're the editor. Like, we get to decide what the ending looks like. Like, it's all up to us. And so, yeah, I think it's empowering, right? To know that, okay, wait, like, because if I'm not in control of myself, something or someone else is. If I'm not in full control, something or someone else is. So it's like, again, it's like, oh shit, well, if I'm not in control, what's controlling me? What forces are controlling me, and how can I essentially take back the control myself?
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on the person I'm working with, how fast we go to some of these concepts. But one of the things I try to share with them is if you say that's the way it is, you're putting up a huge mental block in your ability to change your story, right? Like I tell people, if I really wanted to, I could move to Mexico tomorrow, change my name, take all the money out of my bank account, move to Mexico and just start a new life, right? Like, it's an option. And a lot of people are like, well, no, that's not an option, because you'd leave your family broke, and you'd leave your son, and you wouldn't be a father anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I get that it's not a moral option, and I would never do it ever, right? Because of the person I am, the integrity I have, and the love that I have for my family, and I want to raise my son, and I'm so grateful for my life. But to tell yourself it's not an option is just false, and it boxes you into, like, when you think that way, you build resentment, and you build anger. Well, I have to do this because I have to make money for my family, and they don't understand, and they don't appreciate it, and I'm the one who's working all the time. It's like, well, you could change all of that story, including staying right where you're at, but appreciating the opportunity to contribute to your family.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people box themselves in by saying that that's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's like at the core of a fixed mindset, right? If you have the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset, where the fixed mindset says, this is just how it is, this is just how I am, this is how it's always been, this is how it'll always be, right? That's kind of that fixed mindset. Whereas the growth mindset is like, hey, I have the opportunity to be flexible, and to learn new things, and to, again, I'm not the same person I was 5-10 years ago. One of my favorite authors said, like, if you're not embarrassed by yourself, your former self 5 years ago, you're not doing enough. You're not trying enough new things, or you're not diving into fear enough, because you got to be really going after it and attacking life. Otherwise, life's going to attack you.
I love that. There's there's a TED Talk, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he talked about this idea of, like, thinking we know what our future selves wants, right? Like, if you think about 10, 15 years ago, and you're thinking about all the things you were doing then, you're like, why would I ever think that was important, right? Like, why would I ever have thought that was what I wanted? Yeah. And so it's going to be the same in the next 10 to 15 years. So, so getting so caught up in the idea of, like, what we think success is, and what we think is going to really matter to us in 10 to 15 years, we have no idea. Yeah. So just do the best we can now, today.
Yeah. And I love hearing that. I just love the idea of doing your best today. Like, that's one of my mantras, is like, can you go to bed tonight, and can you answer the question? It's a very simple question, yes or no. Did I try my best? Yeah. And only we can answer that. And if the answer is yes, I tried my best, then that's all you need to do. Yeah. If the answer is no, I did not try my best, okay, let's honor that. Let's honor and say, hey, you know what? I didn't give today my all. That's okay. I'm going to give myself love and compassion. I'm going to try better tomorrow. Because anything else is going to make things worse, right? It's going to erode that confidence, or it's going to break down the trust that you have within yourself. And again, why make it harder? Why make life more difficult when we don't have to?
Yeah. So how would you then, Jason, suggest to people, because then there's the other half of that coin, which is the individuals who are perfectionists, or that they're always striving and achieving without that sense of understanding, like, the goalpost is always going to move. So at the end of the day, they're going to sit down and say, did I do enough? And the answer will always be in a resounding no, right? I could have done one more thing, but they fail to realize, like, oh, okay, I could have worked an hour more, but that would have taken an hour away from my family. So would that have actually been the right decision? So what would you say to the individuals who are maybe struggling with that when they sit down at night and ask themselves, did I do enough, or did I do my best?
Yeah. Amazing question. And so where my heart goes is there's a cost of action, but there's also a cost of inaction. So meaning, like, yeah, it's gonna cost me XYZ to do these things. And I don't mean necessarily like money. I meant like cost in terms of emotional tolls.
Sure.
Right? Like there's a cost to doing these things and there's a cost of not doing those things. And so which cost you more willing to pay? That's kind of the answer I like to, or the question I like to give is, which cost you more willing to pay? Are you willing to give up that extra hour of family time so you can get use that hour for Salesforce and for your work? I'm not here to tell you yes or no, right? But I'm here to essentially prompt the question, which cost would you rather pay?
Yeah.
And I think that is a question that many people need to be asked, and they need to hear that, like, oh shit, like you're right, because there is a cost of inaction. There is a cost to me doing the staying late at work, or again, being on my phone. Like one of the things we do not like at our household is to have phones out in the evening. And so yesterday was an exception. My wife's company just raised some big money. And so like she was on her phone late at night, and it's like, okay, we want to have the rules set in place. Like we normally don't have phones at night, but this is an exception, and we're going to honor that. We're going to say, hey, look, this is something that we normally don't do. And we're going to clearly define that to our children. So we know, hey, look, the rule in the household is that we normally don't have phones out. And this is an exception because of XYZ. Here's what's going on. So we're able to kind of be flexible in the moment, or in the day by day, hour by hour. So again, we're not beating ourselves up. We're not making life harder than it needs to be, more difficult than it needs to be. And as I mentioned earlier, Coach Woody, that's where I see the challenge is not the people don't have the problems they have is not necessarily their problems. It's the resistance to the problems. It's the self-inflicted resistance to the problem they're incurring, which makes things way worse. If you could cut out that resistance and just say, hey, this is where I'm at. I feel tired. I feel exhausted. I feel angry, and that's okay. Oh, well, there's so much lightness that comes along with that.
Sure.
Just saying, hey, look, this is where I'm at. I'm a human. I'm not a robot.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And that's the new model that I'm putting together for well-being has a new piece to it that not a lot of other models do, which is called directional well-being. And it's this idea of, do I know which direction I want my life to take, and are the rest of my aspects of well-being supporting that? And so I think that's a big piece of what a lot of people are missing, is because the question, could I have done more? Almost always, yes. You could have done
always
more, right? But the question becomes, is would that have served the life that you're trying to build? So I have, I play pickleball a lot. You wouldn't know it watching me play, given my skill level, but I play a lot, and I'll usually play from 8 to 10 in the morning.
Amazing.
So if anybody's ever trying to find me, right? Exactly. What are most other people doing 8 to 10?
Not that.
They're working. Exactly. And so so the people I play with are typically retired, and they're always asking me, what do you do that allows you to play at this time of the day, right? Are you the night shift worker or blah, blah, blah? And I always just laugh. And it reminds me that I'm grateful that I've built a life that has taken hard work that allows me to do that. I also, from time to time, get that conflict of, should I be doing something else with this time besides pickleball? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I've built pickleball into my life for many specific reasons. All right. Not to get too crazy. Insert any activity that you want to do, but it's good physically. It incorporates side-to-side movements for physical wellness, which I don't have in other things because I do lift weights and run and stuff. It also is a little bit of a competitive aspect. So as we get older, we don't have a lot of things that we strive to be competitive for. So this is kind of a fun way to do it. Mm-hmm. But it also incorporates social wellness into the mix. So I've actually literally gotten jobs. Like I've had companies hire me because I played pickleball with their director or their CEO. And so, not what I intended to do, but it's just a nice, fortunate circumstance related to that. And so all of those things were the reason I chose pickleball. And I also asked myself, I also, like, so many of those people are out there retired. They waited until they were 65 before they
Yes.
said, I now have the right to go do something that I enjoy doing. And I said, I don't want that. I'd rather go play pickleball now. Like,
Yep.
okay, so I'm not doing an hour or 2 or 6 hours a week of quote unquote work, but I'm doing things that fulfill me, that align with other aspects of my life, that give me enjoyment and are going to benefit me. Right. It's
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
intentionality.
Fills your soul and not just your bank account.
Yeah.
The idea of like, hey, what's going to fill my soul today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's that it's not pickleball. My answer to people is not pickleball, but it's what are the things that you're saying no to because you think you have some responsibility to something that you're putting in your mind as this big lofty thing that you have to do when in all actuality. And I play pickleball with my son. He started to get into it. My wife enjoys doing it. So I'm not suggesting you just go shirk responsibility and go have fun all the time. Right. But ask yourself, like, what am I saying no to that could fulfill me in a lot of other things that I think I can't do because I have this preconceived notion of what success is.
Exactly.